And CNN correspondent John Holloman is here to take us through it. John.
All right. Veronica, the astronauts had been working earlier this evening down in this area. Now they're right here near the top of the telescope. Let's go live to space and look at the picture coming down from the Space Shuttle's cargo bay. You can see where the astronauts are. The big white thing in the front of your screen is the robot arm. And you can see a flat panel up at the top, just above the astronaut's head. That's the cover, the aperture door, which lets light into the Hubble Space Telescope when it is operating. It's closed now, of course, to keep debris out of there while the astronauts work. On the phone with us, astronaut Story Musgrave, who is one of the few human beings who has ever been in the position these astronauts are working right now. Story, as you said, the view of the Earth from there is spectacular. Is it any better for the astronauts? I'm sure it must be better for the astronauts who are out there than it is for us looking at this live picture coming down here to Earth.
Not hugely better than this, John. You do have the aperture door. That's where the heavens come into the telescope from billions of years out. You can see Africa, South Middle Africa going by, beautiful convective cloud patterns. And this is a nice kind of perspective here, looking down along the arm out to the telescope, which is hanging down toward Earth.
Yeah, a few minutes ago, we saw a picture of a big rip, or at least it appeared to be a fairly large rip in the side of the protective film on the outside of the telescope. Let's talk a little bit about that. Could you tell from your perspective how large a rip that is?
I would guess it was a triangular shape like you saw. I would guess it was about 8 inches by 5 inches by 4 inches. I am very surprised because when I visited that 3 years ago, the entire telescope was totally clean. There were no rips and no obvious degradation of the thermal protective cover. And now there are all kinds of tears and rips in addition to generalized degradation.
What's different about the telescope that would cause it to, after 3 years of use, when you were there, to be so pristine and to have these rips now? Is anybody speculating there in mission control on what might have caused all this?
No. I think we'd have to look at the LDEF that we had out there for 5 years. We'd have to look at other experiences we've had. But, of course, we have never visited a satellite which has been out there 7 years.
Yeah. Now, this is a different view. It's back to the area where that rip was discovered. How thick is the protective material? Is it like aluminum foil or tin foil, or is it thicker than that?
It's like the aluminum foil that you use in your kitchen. That's how thin that outer layer is, and it's Teflon coated.
And how are they going to repair it? Are they going to try to use tape or something else as they are beginning their work on this final project of the night?
The work they're using right now is after we noticed that delamination on my flight, we added an MLI repair kit. They're using the standard repair kit to do this. When they come back in tonight, they will have to construct the repair kits for tomorrow. Right,
and tomorrow night spacewalk not totally scheduled. Story, thanks very much for joining us again. Throughout the next 3 or 4 hours, as long as Story Musgrave is willing, we'll have him here to help us, and we'll continue our coverage of the Hubble Space Telescope repair mission, not only tonight, but with the additional spacewalks tomorrow night and when the telescope's released the night after that.
All right, thank you very much. And John Holloman will bring us a special half hour of live coverage of the Shuttle Cruise spacewalk in about 45 minutes.
The following is CNN's coverage of a live event.
The astronauts walking in space to fix the Hubble Space Telescope thought they'd be finished with their repair mission by now, but extensive damage to the telescope's protective cover has created more work for the spacewalkers. Joining us to talk about the mission and the telescope and its future are several guests. With me at CNN Center, astronomer Dick Miller from Georgia State University. Now, Greg Harbaugh and Joe Tanner have replaced one of the electronics boxes which allows the solar panels on the telescope, these things, to follow the sun and charge the batteries inside. The work was very impressive to astronaut Story Musgrave, who spent 3.5 hours attempting to replace one of the boxes 3 years ago. Story, what was different about this spacewalk and the replacement of that solar array drives electronics box that gave you so much trouble?
John, I had to deal with the screws individually. 10 connections on the back of that, similar to the connections on the back of your personal computer, except in little tiny 2 to 3 millimeter screws.
And you're wearing thick gloves while you're doing this job, too, which had to make it more difficult.
Thick gloves and a 4-foot tool, and the real problem was the screws would dance their way out and get lost.
Now,
and I had to chase them around.
Yeah, the capsule communicator down at Mission Control told the spacewalkers about your reaction there in Mission Control several hours back as the connections were completed. What did you say or do?
Oh, I was screaming across the room. I just saw my old nemesis there getting beat down the way it should have. I saw it was still hand-intensive, not nowhere near as hand-intensive as when I had to do it, but at least it was well under control, very predictable.
Yeah. Over the past hour, the spacewalkers have gone to the top of the telescope, and they've replaced some solar covers over magnetometers, covers that these magnetometers let the telescope find the Earth's magnetic field. Story, you had to manufacture the covers that were up there that were just replaced. A couple of questions for you on that. First, as you looked at your covers, did they seem to be damaged significantly, or did they look okay to you?
Still a very nice copper color, and the tie wraps, they looked all right too. This was very rewarding to me because it was the first time the folks on the ground had ever seen those. After I put those on, we had to rotate the telescope so there was no daylight time for anyone to see it. This is the first time anyone except Jeff Hoffman and myself had ever seen our work.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What's going to happen to those covers that you put on there? Will they, I'm sure they'll come back with the astronauts. Are they going to be dissected by scientists on the ground, probably?
They left them on. They just covered, they put the new covers right on top of them.
Okay, so there's just extra protection up there.
There's no souvenirs for me.
That's a shame. Right now, the astronauts are using whatever they could find inside the shuttle to repair some of the rips near the top of the telescope. Those are the pictures that we're showing you right now of this repair work underway. The two astronauts continuing to do that as we speak. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, a discussion with astronomers, a NASA program scientist, and Story Musgrave about the future of the Space Telescope and tomorrow night's recently scheduled spacewalk to fix it. Stay with CNN. Live picture from 375 miles, 600 kilometers above the Earth. We're back with a panel of experts on the Hubble Space Telescope and spacewalking to fix it. Before we go to our panel, let's talk about what's going on right now. You can see there is what looks to be a piece of aluminum foil with some joints in it that is being placed over a section of the Hubble Space Telescope. That's one of the repair kits that the astronauts had that they could use for just such a repair job as Greg Harbaugh is doing out at the end of the robot arm right now. As we watch Greg work, let's bring in Dick Miller as an astronomer. Dick, who has in the past worked for NASA, been a program science team member on this. Have you heard anybody complain about the quality of the pictures from the telescope, despite the fact there are these rips in the insulation outside?
There have been no complaints that I'm aware of at all. The pictures that Hubble has provided have been superb pictures. Probably one of the best examples is the Hubble Deep Field images, which the Wide Field Planetary Camera has provided. It's an extraordinary picture. There's nothing like it anywhere. So I think that the damage that we've seen certainly has not in any way impaired the performance of Hubble at this point.
Yeah, joining us for Mission Control is NASA program scientist, newly named director of NASA's Origins program, Ed Weiler. Ed, I want you and Story Musgrave to both talk with our viewers about how tomorrow night's spacewalk will protect the telescope best. Ed, you go first.
Well, John, I think the question you asked Dick was an important one because we haven't noticed any degradation of the telescope whatsoever. And one of the reasons is that the damage is not extensive. It's 14 square feet out of 1,400 square feet.
Yeah.
So it's actually very, very minor in terms of square area.
But it looks funny. It looks bad on TV because what we're seeing is close-ups of it.
Exactly. I was talking to some reporters yesterday. When we did a full scale survey of the entire telescope at very high resolution, almost like a microscope, the camera would stop at places where there was damage, and it would hesitate there for a long time. So most of the stuff you saw on television was the bad stuff.
Yeah. We've got, let me ask Story about tomorrow night's spacewalk, and if you want to jump in, Ed or Dick, you can all just kind of participate round robin here. Story, what have the astronauts been doing, and what are they doing inside Discovery's crew cabin right now to get ready for this contingency spacewalk? Are they going to be doing more things like they're doing right now?
Yes, they are. The repairs they're doing now, though, are using the kit as it was designed and as it was flown. They've not had to do a lot of construction. They may already have been embarked on constructing. They're going to have to construct the panels that they'll put on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. We gave them a whole bunch of 9 by 16-inch pieces of insulation, and they were actually working on it a couple hours ago. We got some downlink of it, sewing them together basically to make bigger patches out of the small ones.
Oh, and they're using one of these 9 by 16s. I guess Greg Harbaugh is using that right now to
well, actually, the one he's got now are the two that were prepared already. See, what we worried about, John, was that the meteorite might make a hole in the tube.
Yeah.
And so we prepared these 1 foot by 3 foot prefabricated patches and brought them up, luckily.
Yeah, earlier in our broadcast, I was asking Dick Miller about what might have caused this damage to the telescope. What do you think, Story? What do you think might have created these rips?
I think we're just learning something here. The LDEF, which as I recall was up about 5.5 years, the thermal protective covers on it were also damaged considerably. We just do not get satellites back home that have been out here, been out 7 years, and we don't go and revisit them either. This may be a generic phenomenon which happens exponentially with these kind of coverings. And so it makes you think about what we'll have in 1999. I think we're learning things here because we don't get to visit satellites that have been out 7 years, and we don't get them home either.
So, John, we have a pretty good idea what's going on here because the damage is only on the sunny side of the spacecraft. A lot of people in the press are talking about atomic oxygen. That's totally ruled out because if that were the case, both sides of the spacecraft would have been affected equally. We're pretty sure that the ultraviolet light from the sun weakens the material, and then the constant going from night to day, the thermal expansion and contraction then causes a mechanical problem with it. And that's the best guess we have now. But really, before we speculate too much, we need a piece of this stuff on the ground to analyze it. And
yeah, how much are you going to get?
I think we got about a 4 by 6 inch square.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Dick.
I'm truly impressed at the fact that you were prepared for these kinds of repairs going up. You know, I'm well aware that you try to simulate all kinds of possible things that you may run into in a mission like this, but clearly you were well prepared for all these kinds of contingencies. So,
well, we've learned something. Some of us who've been around for 20 years were startled to find out that the insulation that you're looking at right now was actually designed so that it could be easily taken off and replaced. It's actually attached. 3 by 12 foot sections there are attached by Velcro strips underneath. So if we have to replace all the insulation in 99, which is a possibility, it's like a wallpapering job but without the paste.
But a lot of dust. I think you'd create a whole bunch of dust pulling that Velcro off, and I think a lot of that material would come apart. You might want to wrap the whole thing in a blanket.
Well, that's another possibility we're going to be looking at, obviously.
Yeah, that's the thing. We've been talking, and some of our viewers have chimed in with questions through email, have wanted to know if you wrap, is it possible to wrap the whole outer skin of the telescope in another blanket?
It's a possibility we're going to be looking at. Luckily, we have some time now, and you know, with these patches, we've gotten the major problems out of the way, and hopefully there'll be no problem for the next 2.5 years. And we'll have a lot of time to consider those kinds of ideas. That idea has been thrown around in the control room, too, I must admit.
Yeah. Ed, Story, and Dick, are you guys worried about tomorrow night's spacewalk more than you are about the spacewalks that the astronauts have trained so hard to do?
Well, I'll go first because in the control center, frankly, the spacewalk tomorrow is something that we would like to do because we have the contingency of an extra EVA. Important point is we don't have to do it. That is, even if the astronauts were not successful getting the insulation covered on bays 7, 8, and 10, a lot of us, not a lot of us, the thermal engineers feel that we could probably make it to 99 if we had to. But if we started experiencing problems, we have an operational contingency, and that is we just would avoid pointing the telescope so the sun would hit this at a 90-degree angle. So there are workarounds even if a problem did develop.
How about you, Story? Any concern?
I think we'll have good mental rehearsal. I think tonight you'll look at the job it needs to be doing. That thing will be all constructed, and they'll be using them mental visualization and imagination, and it'll go slick tomorrow.
What do you think, Dick?
I don't think there'll be any problem at all. From my experience and what I've seen of the preparedness that the astronauts have for these kinds of contingencies, they're well prepared to handle this kind of thing.
All right, our live pictures continue to come down from space. What we'll do is take another break and hope to see the sun come up. Let our viewers see that occur as it does every 90 minutes for the astronauts. And sometimes we're able to show it to you live on television, other times we are not. We'll come back with more questions from our viewers around the world and continue to discuss the Hubble repair mission in just a minute. Stay with CNN.
Joe Tanner showing the bird's eye view from on high as he and Greg Harbaugh now are being maneuvered back down into the cargo bay after completing the multi-layer insulation repair work near the top of the telescope on the light shield. This view is out of the forward windows toward the flight deck of Discovery.
And Houston Discovery, when we have them clear, we go for a rotate.
That's the voice of NASA mission commentator Rob Navius as the astronauts have completed their spacewalk work apparently and are getting ready to come back inside at the end of another long night's work for the astronauts. About 3 sunrises and sunsets they have been able to see during this repair mission. We've got plenty of questions from our viewers, and let's start with one for Dick Miller. Dick, this was emailed to us just during the day today, and the viewer wants to know how far away the Hubble Space Telescope, I guess when it's as far out as it can be, how far has it been able to see?
Well, the Hubble Space Telescope has been able to look out to distances that approach 90% of the age of the universe. As we know, if you look at objects that are moving away from us as the universe expands, what you find is that those objects that are the most distant are racing away from us. And as a result, the light that reaches us is actually shifted from the blue end of the spectrum to the red. And that's one of the really nice things about having Nick Moss now on board the Hubble Space Telescope.
One of the new instruments that we put in on the first night of spacewalk, right in here. Because
it will now actually let us see some objects that are at even more or even greater distances than what we've been able to view before. So that is a very big plus for having Nick Moss on board.
Yeah, here's a question for Ed Weiler. Ed, has the idea of having several space telescopes all working together, like the very large array telescopes on the ground in radio astronomy, ever been considered seriously by NASA or NASA and other space agencies working together?
I'm glad you asked that question. As a matter of fact, in my new job as director of the Origins program, that is the end goal of the program. That is to launch several very large telescopes the size of Hubble, not free flying, but put them on the end of a solid beam about 100 meters in diameter, about 4 or 5 telescopes about the size of Hubble, and combine the light from those telescopes to produce an image that has the kind of resolution you'd get from one telescope that's 100 meters in diameter. And this is the same principle that the radio telescopes arrays on the ground use. With that kind of telescope, which we hope to maybe be able to launch in 15 or 20 years, you'd have the ability to actually image Earth-like planets around other stars, but not just take pictures of the pale blue dot, but actually analyze their atmospheres for oxygen, carbon dioxide, water vapor, which would indicate that life like we know it could exist there.
I've asked this question before through the years of talking to people like Ed Weiler, Dick Miller, and Story Musgrave. Do the three of you have any doubt at all that we're going to find life out there someplace as we keep looking? Dick, jump in.
I think there's no question that there's life out in the universe. The question is, how easily will one be able to detect it? I think that turns out to be a much more difficult question to answer. But given the vastness of the universe, there absolutely has to be life somewhere in the universe.
I'm just looking at this picture. It's not live picture. It's a picture we recorded about an hour ago of Harbaugh and Tanner out at the end of the robot arm with the the beautiful blue planet spinning below them. It is, Story Musgrave, tell your story again. In fact, we've got a viewer question from you about what it was like when you were up at the top of the telescope on one of your spacewalks. Let me see if I can find the precise words of this question. At any rate, you were, your partner on the spacewalk said to you, go back up and look, yeah?
It's scale and it's distance, and it's 60 feet at the bottom of the bay, but it's a 360 view. It's coming up on Perth, West Australia, and seeing the Great Barrier Reef, you know, and it's being over Florida, looking at your launch site and seeing a 1,000-mile aurora over northern Canada.
Yeah.
But it's scale and it's distance, and it's what space brings to you. It's what the Hubble Space Telescope brings to you, time and distance.
Now, let me ask you this story. Were you able at any point during your spacewalk up at the top of the telescope to, instead of looking down at the Earth, look back at the stars?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time taking a dark pass in which I totally dark adapt. Not so much during the spacewalk because you cannot dark adapt there. I've had several night passes in which you totally dark adapt, and you're looking at the stars, east and west, they rise and they fall, and north and south, they just rotate around. You're looking at lightning, you're looking at auroras, you're looking at meteorites coming in underneath you, you're looking at Magellanic clouds, you're looking at stars you've never seen before. Just flat glorious.
Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of our broadcast that perhaps we get to see sunrise on the shuttle. We are, I think, getting to do that right now. This is a camera, I'm guessing this is the camera out at the end of the robot arm, or it was before it went away. And I'm hoping we'll be able to get some more pictures there and show our viewers more of that spectacular view of the Earth in sunlight as the Earth spins beneath the shuttle. We've got another viewer question here, and I'll read the question and then we'll decide who should answer it. Frequent mention is made of looking back in time and distance at the Big Bang. Is there a central spot for the Big Bang that astronomers focus on? Ed Weiler, let me go to you first and then Dick Miller.
Well, if we lived in a three-dimensional universe, there would be, but we don't. We live in a four-dimensional universe with time being another axis. So there really is no center to the universe. It's not easy to explain without being able to use my hands. Maybe, Dick, you should take this. You have the advantage there.
Take your hands and explain this, Dick.
Well, in the case of the Big Bang, what you have is a universe that's expanded, and probably the simplest way to think about this is to think of this as a raisin cake, and think of all the raisins that are inside of that cake. And as the cake is baked and it expands, all of the raisins in the cake would tend to move apart. And regardless of where you might choose to be in that cake, you would always see things receding from you. So that regardless of what your vantage point in the universe might be, what you would see then is an expanding universe. So there's really no point that you could pick as, quote, the center of your universe, because from your perspective, you would always see the galaxies receding from you. So in that sense, there is not, quote, a single point.
Yeah, okay, all right. This is for Story Musgrave, I think. Considering that we, in the human race, have only explored the planets in our own solar system, this viewer wonders how we can make the assumption that just because none of the other planets in our solar system contains life, then life in the rest of the universe is hard to find or non-existent. Story, what do you think about life on other planets in other parts of the universe?
We have no evidence that life is on other planets with the resolution of the data we have. But there aren't that many planets in our solar system, and here we got life on this one, Earth. I think planetary formation is a cosmic imperative. I think it's going on everywhere out there. I think when you have planets and second law of thermodynamics, when a sun heats them up, the complexity is going to grow, and I think there's life, teeming life, everywhere in our universe and bunches of other universes also.
John, could I add to that?
Please.
Yeah, I like to use the analogy with Mars. I'm not so sure there isn't life in the solar system. I don't think we've proved that yet, that there isn't. The Mars rock, the meteorite, is not definitive proof of life. However, it's awfully tantalizing data. Just many, many years ago, biologists were telling us that life was a freak of nature. It really doesn't, happen in a lot of other places. It was just a miracle it happened on Earth. Yet just in the last few years, we've discovered a new form of life on Earth that lives at the bottom of the ocean, survives near thermal vents with the water almost boiling, and basically eats sulfur and lives off the heat. I mean, this is not exactly what we think of as life. Basically, what we're finding is that life seems to spring up on the Earth in really rotten environments. And then if the Mars rock really is evidence of past life on Mars, the implications are enormously important, because statistically speaking. The first place we have a chance to look besides the Earth, we find something that may be life. That's sort of like saying that, well, finding life in the universe is like finding a needle in the haystack. You walk up to the haystack and you reach in, and the first thing you pull out is a needle. It implies there may be a lot more needles in there.
Well, it's a fascinating subject, and it's something that hopefully the Hubble Space Telescope, or these the Origins Project's telescopes that you're talking about having in space, Ed Weiler, will bring back to those of us who are here on Earth. It's been a very fast half hour. Let me go back to the live picture from space as we close our broadcast, because there's an interesting shot of the robot arm there. You can see the very top of the Hubble Space Telescope, where the two astronauts have completed some patches on the outside of the telescope skin. And you can also see the beginnings of sunrise. To Dick Miller, our astronomer from Georgia State University here in Atlanta, to Ed Weiler, the NASA Science Program and the Origins Project at the Johnson Space Center, and to astronaut Story Musgrave. Thanks to all three of you for being here. And as we close, you can begin to see some clouds on the surface of planet Earth as the Hubble Space Telescope and Space Shuttle Discovery move overhead. Thanks for being with us. The first night of Hubble repair spacewalks was supposed to begin early. The spacewalking astronauts were in the airlock 2 hours ahead of schedule. But when they depressurized the airlock, a final step before opening the door to the outside, one of Hubble's solar panels began to spin wildly and had to be stopped by the telescope's computer. A jet of exhaust from the airlock apparently to blame. The astronauts shined a flashlight on the panels to let ground controllers have an early look. Finally, the astronauts, Mark Lee and Steve Smith, were allowed to begin their work, replacing two phone booth-sized instruments in the telescope's base. Scientists who use the telescope are ecstatic with what they'll get to see next.
As soon as we start doing science in a couple of months with the instruments, we think that we're going to be able to take really deep pictures of the edge of the universe, turn on both cameras, and take extremely deep pictures looking for the very first galaxies as they were forming, watch the stars forming inside those galaxies.
The spacewalk was extended when the astronauts had trouble sealing the huge doors where the new equipment is stored. But a series of maneuvers at the very end of the spacewalk were successful in getting those doors properly sealed.
Go ahead. Beautiful picture, by the way.
The spacewalking astronauts spent their second night outside replacing a fine guidance sensor used to point the telescope and a tape recorder used to store Hubble data during times when it can't transmit live to Earth. For one of the spacewalkers, Joe Tanner, it was his first time outside in orbit.
We just got TV back in time to see you come out on the beginning of your very first EVA. Welcome to space, and it was nice seeing a big smile on your face. Have a good one.
Thank you, Jeff. I think you're going to see a smile a lot today.
The astronauts made the job look almost commonplace, replacing two big parts of the telescope, sometimes with one astronaut grabbing the other on the back to offer some extra help inside the huge instrument. Astronaut Story Musgrave, who orchestrated the first Hubble repair 3 years ago, was impressed with the pictures of Joe Tanner closing the compartment containing one of the newly replaced parts.
One nice thing about it is the reflection. The Hubble is really an aesthetic. It's a beautiful looking instrument, and its beauty reflects its ability to perform, but that reflection allows you to see not only the hands and the tools from one vantage point, but also you see them mirrored on there. You are basically seeing the ballet in work.
The biggest surprise to the astronauts was some damage to the outer skin. The astronauts have a repair kit which includes special tape which could seal rips in the multi-layered insulation around the telescope. Cracked and damaged insulation all over the Hubble Space Telescope convinced NASA managers to give the astronauts more work to do before they come home. Several doors around the telescope have insulation blankets that are broken and brittle, which might come off, endangering the equipment inside and the telescope's ability to take clear pictures.
There's all kinds of things involved, so it's quite a construction process, almost like a seamstress would do.
For the third spacewalk, a camera high above the Hubble telescope showed the Earth rotating beneath Discovery. And that was before the astronauts even got out. Once they did, they spent 2 hours replacing a computer switcher for the telescope, which has 20 different connectors around it. Next up was the replacement of a reel-to-reel tape recorder with a digital one. It doesn't use tape and should be much more reliable. At the end of the walk, there was a problem. The telescope has a series of reaction wheels which keep it steady in its orbit. The job was to remove a broken one and replace it with a new model. One of the 3 bolts holding the old wheel in place wouldn't budge, so the crew got permission to manhandle it and finish the job. As the third spacewalk came to an end, the astronauts cleaned up and prepared for the insulation fix, while the crew inside Discovery boosted the telescope's orbit by about 2 miles.
Check out CNN Interactive's Discovery Hubble Digital Theater.
You're looking at live pictures coming at you from out of space.
Take it when you're ready.
This is the Space Shuttle Discovery, where astronauts are working on the space telescope, the Hubble telescope. A short while ago, 2 crew members of the US Space Shuttle Discovery came back inside after hours of walking in space on a high-flying repair mission on the telescope. Gregory Harbour and Joe Tanner are upgrading the Hubble telescope. They replaced an electronics box for one of Hubble's solar panels. They're also reattaching some of the telescope's insulation cover, which protects it from the sun's heat. The old cover has been peeling off. Because of the extensive damage, the Discovery crew is now adding a 5th spacewalk for Monday night.
Discovery astronauts completed scheduled repairs to the Hubble telescope during their 4th walk in space. Now they're preparing for another unscheduled spacewalk. In the coming hours, the astronauts will try to finish repairing some significant damage to an insulation blanket designed to protect the Hubble telescope from sunlight. The shuttle is scheduled to land on Friday at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Die Erde aus Sicht der Weltraumfähre Discovery. Die Astronauten Greg Harbour und Joe Tanner hatten keine Zeit, diesen Anblick zu genießen. Zwar dauerte ihr Ausflug ins All fast 6,5 Stunden, doch hatten sie dabei alle Hände voll zu tun. Zunächst brachten sie ein neues Kontrollgerät für die Sonnensegel an dem Superteleskop an. Anschließend besserten sie die beschädigte Außenhaut vom Hubble aus. Beschädigt war allerdings nur die erste von insgesamt 16 Schutzschichten. Und das auch nur auf einer Fläche von 1,3 Quadratmetern. Nach Angaben des Kontrollzentrums in Houston war diese Reparatur also noch nicht erforderlich. Doch die nächste Wartung ist erst für 1999 geplant. Bis dahin hätte die intensive Sonneneinstrahlung bei dem $2 Milliarden teuren Teleskop größere Schäden anrichten können. Hubbles Außenhaut ist extremen Belastungen ausgesetzt. Jedes Mal, wenn das Teleskop vom Schatten ins Sonnenlicht kommt, steigt die Temperatur von minus 240 Grad Celsius auf plus 200.
Has been retrofitted with a hot new array of upgrades, but it's the relentless heat from the sun that has NASA worried. During the mission's 4th spacewalk, Discovery astronauts began patching the Hubble's ripped and weakened insulation. In a few hours, a 5th spacewalk is planned to complete the temporary patch job. Experts worry that sun shining through gaps in the insulation may damage the telescope's delicate instruments. Full-scale repairs have to wait until late in 1999.
Following is CNN's coverage of a live event.
What a night for the astronauts. When they were finished with their normal work out in the cargo bay of Shuttle Discovery and about to go back inside, they got word there might be a new problem with the Hubble Space Telescope. Let me take you out into the cargo bay where the astronauts who were supposed to be getting ready for bed right now are continuing to work. They are packing up their gear and preparing to end their 5 nights of spacewalk, but there is a possibility now that they may have to go outside for a 6th time, which would break a record, to replace something on the Hubble Space Telescope called a reaction wheel assembly. Now, you may remember that 2 nights ago they replaced a reaction wheel assembly which keeps the telescope steady while it's taking pictures. There are 4 of these things. They sort of look like beer kegs in the telescope. And over the past couple of hours, telescope operators at the Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland have been testing them. One of them, not the one the astronauts replaced 2 nights ago, seems to have a problem. It hasn't been spinning as fast as the others. So the astronauts were kept in the airlock at the end of their regular spacewalk for about an extra hour, waiting to find out whether they'd end their 5th spacewalk, and almost immediately began a record 6th one to replace the reaction wheel. The word got to them about 25 minutes ago that they weren't going to do a 6th spacewalk tonight, but they might get to do one tomorrow night. Joining us to talk about these late-breaking developments, a couple of folks who know a lot about spacewalking and a lot about the Hubble Space Telescope. Astronaut Story Musgrave and NASA Program Manager Ed Weiler, both at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Ed, let me talk to you first. Have I accurately explained what's going on with this reaction wheel in the telescope?
Pretty much, John. The difference is we're not sure we have a problem. In fact, the best guess is that it's a low probability that we have a problem. The wheel, we have the other wheels running at around 20 RPMs, and this one's started out at 0, basically, but in the last hour it's starting to edge up, and now it's about 2 RPMs. The interesting thing is it's running colder than the other 2 wheels, and these wheels have grease in them, and we all know how grease reacts with temperature.
And the 4 wheels have been off for the past few days, I guess, while the telescope has been, a lot of its systems have been shut down for the repair. Am I right?
Exactly. That's why they cooled down. This one, the one that's slow is running around minus 12 degrees centigrade, whereas the ones that are operating more or less normally is up about minus 4 degrees centigrade.
Yeah, well, it certainly caused a little extra activity for the mission managers down there at Houston.
Sure has.
Story Musgrave, I don't know how closely you have been keeping up, because you and I haven't talked in about an hour and a half, but I guess there are no real surprises for spacewalking astronauts. I mean, the folks who were out there got to spend an extra hour in the airlock not knowing really what was going to happen to them. How prepared are astronauts for last-minute changes like this?
Yeah, I think very prepared. The serendipity is that a second reaction wheel, RWA, was they brought 2 of them up there with them. If they'd only brought 1 to do the replacement as planned, of course, the fact that another might be having a problem would have been irrelevant. They couldn't have done anything about it. Well, the serendipity is that 2 new ones were brought up with them.
I'm sorry, I've been wondering about this all night. The spacewalk that was conducted over the past 3-4 hours was done with things that the astronauts had on board. How much extra stuff is there in the crew cabin of a space shuttle to be used just in case of contingencies like this? I mean, is every nook and cranny filled with something they might have to use in case of an unusual problem?
Every nook and cranny is filled, but not with spare parts. And so this is just a serendipity that a second one was on board.
Yeah, well,
most of the time, spare parts are not on board. You bring up the complement you need.
Yeah, a question for you and Ed Weiler. If they decide, Ed, if the people who work for you at the Goddard Space Flight Center decide, well, we've got this spare reaction wheel assembly, the other one still isn't spinning as fast as we'd like, and the astronauts have to go out and fix it, what would the plan be? I mean, to send the astronauts who've already replaced one of them back out, or to send the other pair of astronauts who didn't do a spacewalk tonight? And how long would it take, do you think?
Well, let me give you a timeline. First of all, in about, let me look at my watch, in about 20 minutes we're going to have a meeting with via the comlink with Goddard. And by then we'll know if a specific test is ready to run to send up to the spacecraft. If we start running that test around 2:30 Central Time, we should know if the reaction wheel is okay or not by about 3:30 Central Standard Time. If the test shows the wheel has failed for some reason, then the plan would be to do a short spacewalk tomorrow. I would imagine they would alternate the crew back to the one that did the spacewalk last night, which is a standard practice. The RWA changeout takes about an hour, and there's about an hour of crew time to prepare get the tools out and put them all away. So you're probably talking a short spacewalk of 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, we've got some pictures which we'll show to our viewers as we continue with this special broadcast, showing what it was like when the astronauts replaced that reaction wheel assembly 2 spacewalks ago. But anyway, to bring our viewers up to date, after 4 nights in a row of extended spacewalks to fix the Hubble Space Telescope, the 5th one is now in its final moments. After the astronauts spent this extra hour in the airlock, they're back outside cleaning up now, making the cargo bay of the space shuttle as pristine as it's possible for it to be for the return of the shuttle to Earth. The astronauts were prepared to end the spacewalk when controllers told them they might have to do this one additional thing. Mark Lee, Steve Smith in the shuttle's airlock, as we said, or rather they've been out in the cargo bay. They may be on their way back in the airlock to see if they get more time to conduct some time out in space. This is a picture from earlier when they were doing the main thing that was on their plate for this night of spacewalking, which was to put some protective panels over 3 of the doors on the side of the Hubble Space Telescope. When the astronauts got outside the first time, they looked at this and they compared it to what Story Musgrave had seen when he went out to do the first Hubble repair mission 3 years ago, and the doors look remarkably different. You can see in this picture, if you look right at the top of your screen in the middle, you can see it looks like aluminum foil that somebody's wadded up in a ball and then tried to stretch out again. Story, you told me that you saw nothing like that when you went out 3 years ago. It looked pristine and smooth, correct?
Correct, John. We were up there about 3.5 years after launch, and it was totally clean. You could see on the outside some meteoroid penetrations, but all the insulation, all the MLI was totally clean and intact, as was the paint on the handrails.
Yeah. So there's been a lot that has happened in the intervening 3 years. Earlier tonight we saw pictures of some of the handrails that were painted bright yellow before the Hubble Space Telescope was launched. They don't look bright yellow anymore. They look a very dark color, at least on the side of the telescope that faces the sun. You might be able to see some of those handrails actually on your screen right now, right where the CNN sign is. You can see a couple of handrails. They're not bright, shiny yellow anymore. They're sort of a brownish color. That apparently from massive exposure to the sun. And on some of those handrails, the paint has peeled back, and it looks sort of like the top of a sardine can after you open it. It's a remarkable thing. And when we come back, we're going to take another look at some of these pictures. In fact, here's a picture of one of the handrails that the astronauts who do the next Hubble servicing mission, more than 3 years from now, will have to walk around on. And you can see there's some paint gone from the bottom of that handrail. And you can also see that the color of the handrail itself is nothing like what it was when it left the Earth about 7 years ago. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to our panel of experts. We'll bring in astronomer Dave Dundee from the Fernbach Science Center in Atlanta, who's going to talk about the new capabilities the telescope has. And there's the live picture coming down from space. I don't see any sign of movement. It may well be that the 2 spacewalking astronauts are back in that airlock, ending their 5th spacewalk. We'll be right back. Stay with CNN.
Okay, this was for PAO, if I heard you right, and they're listening.
All right, this question is from Dan Heidel from Poland, Wisconsin.
Question for the astronauts coming up from the Earth. Let's listen to the question and what the astronauts are going to say in answer to it.
Whether or not we're afraid and how long we train for the Hubble mission. A lot of it depends on, what mission it is, and there's really, 2 kinds of fear. There's fear of the unknown and fear that something might happen to you. And for the first mission, on top of, some anxiety, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what launch is like, you don't know what space is like, you don't know how you're going to react to space. So there's a little anxiety because of that. And everybody thinks a little bit about the tragedy that could happen. Challenger wasn't all that long ago, and it's not out of our minds, but to be an astronaut, you have to have a lot of confidence all the people at the Kennedy Space Center and elsewhere that strap you in, get the vehicle ready, and do all those sorts of things. So I'm sure everybody thinks about, has a little bit of fear when they go up in space, but it's well worth it once you get here. Right now we're up here on a spacewalk, looking down at the Earth. It's just a beautiful blue circle with clouds. We're approaching Africa. It's just a tremendous, tremendous experience. And as far as training for the Hubble mission, the EVA crew was named almost 2 years ago. And we spent about 25 6-hour runs underwater to prepare for this, along with many other training sessions at the Goddard Space Flight Center and around the country at some of the different contractors for the equipment that we put into the Hubble Space Telescope. The rest of the crew came on board about a year before flight, and that's fairly standard for complex missions like this. But the EVA guys have been dreaming about this particular flight and training for it for almost 2 years. And right now we're just coming up on the coast of Africa.
I wonder if this is the first time an astronaut has conducted basically an interview from a viewer on Earth from the cargo bay in a spacesuit. Story Musgrave, what do you think? You got a lot of history lessons on astronauts.
It's the first one that I know of.
Wow, that's quite something. David Dundee is our astronomer guest from the Fernbeck Science Center in Atlanta. David, we've been talking for the past 15 minutes or so about the reaction wheel assemblies that are behind this door on the in one of the bays of the Hubble Space Telescope. What do they do? How do they help you astronomers on the ground when you get pictures back?
Well, reaction wheels basically are like gyroscopes. They help point the telescope and keep it steady. Pointing is terribly important because you want to make accurate measurements of objects, and pointing it one way or another or very precisely at some point in space is very, very important. And of course you want to hold it steady at whatever you're looking at if you're taking measurements or taking data. In many ways, these reaction wheels, if they don't function, the rest of your telescope just is pretty well useless.
Yeah. David, let's talk about the new machines that are located down here on the telescope. They were changed. They were installed on the telescope the first night of the spacewalks, 5 nights ago, I guess it is now. The thing that they're going to do that makes the telescope better for astronomers is they're going to look at infrared instead of ultraviolet. Am I right?
Right. The two major reasons that you want to have periodic missions to the Hubble is not so much repairing what's broken, but to upgrade the technology. Those of you out there who have personal computers know how often you get upgrades in software. Well, when you make a mission to the telescope and then leave it, basically the technology stays frozen in time, like a little time capsule, even though technology is marching forward on the Earth. So it's important to come back to the telescope every few years to upgrade the technology so you're really looking at stuff on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
The most important package they installed this time was the infrared, and basically the Hubble right now, it's the star of its viewing has been the ultraviolet, and that has been a wonder to astronomers because the ultraviolet opens the door to the violent regions in the universe, from black holes to exploding galaxies. The infrared, though, is at the other end of the spectrum, and it's heat radiation. When you put your hand near a toaster and feel heat, that's infrared. The infrared detectors in here detect very minute bits of heat, much more than you can detect with just your hand, and that allows you to view young objects at the other end of stellar evolution, which ultraviolet does so well, and young objects forming in great clouds of gas, nebulae. Possibility of young solar systems could be detected using infrared.
Thank you, David. I've got so many questions from viewers around the world who have emailed us at CNN, and let me get to one of those now. Ed Weiler, this I think would go to you. Is the Hubble being reboosted to a higher orbit for scientific reasons or for better resolution?
of the Hubble Space Telescope?
Well, maybe the former in a sense. It's being boosted to a higher orbit so it doesn't come down, crashing down on Earth. See, as the sun reaches its maximum activity level in 2000, 2001, that'll puff out the Earth's atmosphere, and a little bit of that'll even get up to the Hubble orbit, and Hubble will slowly degrade in terms of altitude. So every time we go up there, we try to boost it back up as high as we can. I guess keeping it in orbit is a scientific reason, but it's also a practical reason.
Yeah, another question for you, Ed. A lot of our viewers want to know how long you planned initially to have the Hubble Space Telescope in orbit sending back pictures, and what's the longest you could possibly keep it up there, and what do you think NASA is going to do with this telescope? How long will we be getting Hubble pictures about once a month that knock our socks off?
Well, the original plan, the original commitment to Congress and the White House back in those days was a 15-year mission with periodic shuttle servicing about every 3 years. Hubble has no consumables on board, you know, like jets or anything like that. It uses things like reaction wheels instead. But the future of Hubble depends on three things. The level of science that's coming out of it. Is it still doing world-class science? Is that science justify the budget per year? And also, very importantly, is the shuttle still flying? That is, how long will we have space shuttles flying or some other vehicle? As we can see from this mission and the first mission, the maintenance of Hubble in orbit is critically dependent on the shuttle program. So, you know, all those things added together, there's no doubt we can keep it going to 2005 with periodic servicing and perhaps putting on some more insulation next time. But beyond that, it really depends on is Hubble still doing world-class science, or should we move on to even a bigger telescope in space?
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and have some more of this friendly conversation around coffee tables and mission management meeting tables in Houston with our three guests. Please stay with us. And if you want to keep up with this mission at a time that you're not at CNN, but you are at a computer, our homepage, CNN.com, has this fabulous thing. It's called the Discovery Hubble Digital Theater. I've been looking at it for my home time after time. You can see a lot of things about this mission that you might not get other places. We urge you to go there sometime. We'll be back with more in just a second. Welcome back. CNN's live coverage of the Hubble Space Telescope repair mission. There it is. You can see the beautiful Earth in the upper right-hand corner of our picture from space. And down just below the solar panels is the area on the telescope where the astronauts may have to conduct a sixth spacewalk about 16 hours from now to replace a device called a reaction wheel assembly. Ed Weiler, who is on the Hubble management team, has had to leave our conversation to go to a meeting to decide how that reaction wheel assembly is working and whether it's going to have to be replaced. Story Musgrave, we've got some picture of the spacewalk 2 nights ago. I believe you and I were together as the astronauts unplugged one of the reaction wheels and installed a new one. We're looking at the area inside Bay 6 where the new reaction wheel is going in at sort of the bottom of our viewer's screen, and the one that seems to be malfunctioning is visible with the white bar around it up at the top of your screen under the word Discovery right now. How tight are the quarters in there? Is this a fairly easy thing for the astronauts to replace?
John, I have not trained on that one, but yes, it is. It was designed from the very earliest history of Hubble. The reaction wheels were designed to be replaced by an EVA crew person. It should be a very reasonable task.
Yeah, Story, if you were going to add an instrument to the Hubble Space Telescope, what would you add to it?
Well, I'm not a scientist, and I'm also not a program manager, but I would add 2 new instruments in 1999. As you know, CoStar, the package we put in to correct for the spherical aberration, right now, CoStar is only sending corrected light to the faint object camera. I would replace both the faint object camera and CoStar with 2 brand new instruments. And I think it's a matter of money that we don't do that as opposed to programmatic or scientific considerations. I think since Hubble is up there flying and being totally supported by the shuttle, the Space Telescope Ops Center, and other people, if the facility is up there, I do not think it is reasonable for budgetary reasons not to have it have a full complement of instruments.
Yeah, all right. Story Musgrave, thanks a lot. Let's go back and Look at the live pictures coming down still from the cargo bay of Space Shuttle Discovery. The astronauts who've been spacewalking since about 10 o'clock Eastern time, about 5.5 hours ago, are now, if not back inside the airlock, they're on their way back there. David Dundee, we have a lot of pictures that the telescope has made. Let me ask you the same question I asked Story. If you could, if you were ruled the world and could put something else on the Hubble Space Telescope to get different kinds of pictures, what would you put in?
Well, I certainly would agree with Story as far as upgrading CoStar. That was a corrective fix, of course, 3.5 years ago. And that would be, of course, something I'd want to do. I think I would also look at the cameras themselves and the technology, the digital technology in these cameras has changed a lot over the last 3 years. And I would think I would upgrade those to more sensitive cameras that could do even more spectacular views. And we've got some loaded up here, some views of if we could see the first one, showing you some of the recent views from the Hubble Space Telescope. And these are some of the areas I think that will be spectacular over the next year or so with the new infrared package.
This is the Orion Nebula.
This is
a beautiful picture.
The Orion Nebula. It's an easy object to see in the winter sky in the northern hemisphere, especially if you have an amateur astronomer. This next one, Lagoon Nebula. These are all young objects where new stars are being born, and infrared. And the next image shows you another image close-up of the Lagoon Nebula. These are places where you can see the first heat signatures and these vast dust clouds of forming new stars.
Yeah, they were all out of time. It's amazing. There's a breaking story aboard the shuttle. The astronauts are going to be told in a few hours whether they're going to have to do a 6th spacewalk, which would break a record. We're going to be talking to the crew of Discovery, the entire crew, in about 26 hours from right now, live on CNN, and I imagine our international viewers will get to look in on that as well. We urge you to be back for that. Thanks for being with us this evening for this additional special. If there's a 6th spacewalk, we'll do another one of these for you as well as talk to the crew of the Space Shuttle. So, thanks for being with us, John Holloman, CNN reporting.
This has been a CNN Live event.
U.S. Space Shuttle astronauts made what they thought was their 5th and final spacewalk a short time ago, repairing the Hubble Space Telescope. But now there's a chance they may have to don their spacesuits again. CNN Space Meister John Holloman joins us now with the very latest. John,
I love your way with words, Bettina. It's fabulous. At this moment, NASA managers are meeting with the operators of the Hubble Space Telescope to determine if there will be a record-breaking 6th spacewalk 16 hours from now. The telescope continues connected to Shuttle Discovery in the cargo bay as it travels through space at nearly 30,000 kilometers per hour. 6 hours ago, 2 astronauts went into the bay to repair insulation panels on the side of the telescope. There was damage there, and I can show it to you on this model, perhaps, where they were doing the repair. This is the side of the telescope that faces the sun, and the damage was here, here, and on a panel over on this side. So the astronauts created this repair kit for the telescope, which they strapped on with pieces of tie wrap and parachute cable and whatever else they could find in the shuttle to connect it here, so it'll last until some more astronauts get up there to do another job on the telescope. So those 3 doors are on equipment cabinets that have insulation that's peeling and cracked. The astronauts, as I say, manufactured this new protective blanket, and you can see there on your screen one of the doors where the protective insulation was added. While that was going on in space, telescope technicians on the ground were testing various pieces of equipment on Hubble. When they started the 4 reaction wheels, which keep the telescope steady as it takes pictures of the universe, they found a problem with one of them. It failed to run at the proper speed. Luckily, the astronauts replaced a different reaction wheel assembly 2 nights ago, so they know how to do this, and there's a spare on board in the shuttle in case of emergency. The astronauts are planning how they would install this second reaction wheel in 16 hours, while managers continue to meet and try to get the bulky wheel to spin at the proper speed so they won't have to go outside again. This is beautiful, isn't it? Just look, this is not live, it's from a little bit earlier. The astronauts now back inside, but this is what it looked like as they floated free out in the cargo bay near the Hubble Space Telescope. Here's the latest. Decision will be made on whether or not to conduct another spacewalk sometime in the next several hours. We'll let you know as soon as that decision is made. We have an interview with the entire Discovery crew, which is scheduled for about 25 hours from right now. If they don't have to do the spacewalk, and if they can kind of maintain their schedule, the astronauts will probably have time to do that. It's their most lengthy interview of the mission, and we'll get to talk to them about how it was out there firsthand. We'll have it for you here, so that's something to look forward to.
How does that actually work? I mean, there are these problems that are coming up, and suddenly they have to make these repair missions. How does NASA prepare, for example, materials? Do they have like a big cargo bay full of stuff that they might use?
Well, what they did was after the first Hubble repair mission 3 years ago, they realized they had some problem with some pieces on the outside of the telescope that might have to be fixed. But astronaut Story Musgrave, who's been helping us throughout this mission, said that when he went out 3 years ago, there was absolutely no damage anywhere on the exterior of the telescope. And the astronauts went out this time, and they found a lot of damage. It looks on the outside there like crumpled up tinfoil. So NASA had some small pieces of replacement tinfoil to put on. They didn't have anything like as big a piece as they'd need to cover these doors, and so what they did was they stitched several of the small panels together to make a big blanket for all three doors. And they used everything you could think of. One of the things they had just in case was some spare supports for the solar panels. You wouldn't expect them to be used on the door of the telescope, but they are being used tonight on the door of the telescope, giving some structural rigidity to these new panels that they stitched together. So the astronauts, who probably don't have a great deal of expertise in knitting, have got some now that they didn't have before, having to knit these replacement panels together. I asked Story Musgrave about this. I said, is the space shuttle just filled up with stuff that you could use in case of emergency? And he said, well, it's filled up with stuff. No inch of space is wasted, but not really the stuff that would make an ideal repair. So they've done the best they could with what they had, and the telescope managers on the ground say this will be enough. It'll keep the insulation from flaking off. Their big worry is that the equipment inside these doors will get extremely hot if the insulation in these panels is gone. And the worst that could happen would be if the telescope were operating, a piece of insulation fell off and in weightlessness went up into the barrel of the telescope. That would block the view of this $2 billion instrument, and that would be horrible for all of us on the ground who love the pretty pictures that the telescope sends down to us.
And of course, I think everybody who's seen the movie Apollo 13, you know, gets reminded of that. Of course, this is a very, very different magnitude. Back then it was...
But it's the same kind of, well, it's not life or death, but it's the same kind of solution. Just grab whatever you have. I mean, you know, they're using pieces of paper towel rolls, potentially, to go out there. And, you know, garbage bag ties, you don't expect them to be seen on the outside of this $2 billion telescope, but there are about 40 of them out there right now because the astronauts use those to extend their parachute rope that they've also used to strap these things on.
Should be interesting to see how they look like in 3 years, for the next 2 years when they do another repair crew. Thank you very much, John Holloman, once again, being with us here, doing all of this stuff with us. It's fun as usual. Thank you.
Same for me. Discovery's crew planned a quick 3-hour spacewalk to put some protective blankets around damaged pieces of insulation on the Hubble Space Telescope, and they conducted it by the numbers. Mark Lee and Steve Smith put the new covers on 3 telescope doors and were prepared to clean up the cargo bay one last time and come in for the last time during the mission. But then something happened.
Goddard has noticed a glitch on one of the RWAs.
Telescope ground managers at the Goddard Space Flight Center were testing the telescope's parts, including the 4 reaction wheel assemblies which keep Hubble steady as it looks at the universe. One of them was performing incorrectly. The spacewalkers replaced another of the reaction wheel assemblies on their 3rd spacewalk, and there's a spare inside the crew cabin, so it wouldn't have been a problem to replace the broken one. But a second set of commands was sent up to the telescope.
It was in an idle mode, and when it should be idling a little higher than the 1 or 2 it was, and we sent up a torque command, which would put power onto the wheel and make it spin faster. And as soon as that command hit the computer up on Hubble, the thing started going to 10, then 20, and in a few seconds it was up in the hundreds.
The reaction wheel came up to speed, and the crew got the word just before bed they wouldn't get to go outside for a 6th time.
Discovery Houston with some word on RWA.
Go ahead.
We just completed a test on reaction wheel number 2. It's good. Checks out just fine.
Up next for the Discovery crew, release of the telescope Tuesday night. When that's done, it will be packing up for the trip home. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Die US-Astronauten Lee und Smith bei ihren letzten Vorbereitungen für den 6. Reparaturspaziergang am Teleskop Hubble. Als schwebende Flickschuster versuchten sie, die beschädigte Isolierschicht des 2 Milliarden Mark teuren Teleskops mit selbstgefertigten Flicken zu erneuern. Das Material war durch die im Weltraum auftretenden starken Temperaturschwankungen in den vergangenen Jahren beschädigt worden. Bei einem für 1999 geplanten Flug einer Raumfähre zu Hubble sollen die verbliebenen Defekte repariert werden.
Ist das Weltraumteleskop Hubble wieder startklar und für neue Aufträge im Weltraum fit. Die letzten Reparaturarbeiten galten der brüchig gewordenen Isolierung. Mit Folie, Draht und Klammern verpassten die Astronauten Lee und Smith dem Teleskop ein neues Gewand. Damit soll Hubble auch die nächsten Jahre den extremen Temperaturen im All standhalten und uns weiterhin atemberaubende Bilder aus den Tiefen des Alls zur Erde schicken.
Mit ihrem 5. und letzten Weltraumspaziergang beendeten die Astronauten der US-Raumfähre Discovery ihre Wartungsreparaturen an dem Riesenteleskop Hubble. Dabei ersetzten sie an einigen Stellen die Folie der Isolierschicht. Die war durch enorme Temperaturschwankungen im All brüchig geworden. Am Freitag kehren die Astronauten wieder zur Erde zurück.
Die US-Raumfähre Discovery hat das Weltraumteleskop Hubble vor 20 Minuten in seine neue Umlaufbahn entlassen. Hubble war von der Discovery-Besatzung während der letzten 8 Tage repariert worden. Bei 5 Weltraumspaziergängen bauten ihm die Astronauten eine neue Kamera ein, mit der es noch weiter in die Vergangenheit schauen und noch schärfere Bilder liefern soll. Außerdem ersetzten sie elektronische Bauteile und flickten die durch Sonnenstrahlung löchrig gewordene Außenhaut des Teleskops. Die Discovery soll in der Nacht zum Freitag wieder auf die Erde zurückkehren.
A short time ago, the U.S. Space Shuttle Discovery gently nudged the telescope back on its own track around the Earth. In 33 hours of work spread over 5 spacewalks, the astronauts upgraded, spruced up, and patched up this telescope. The improvements should allow astronomers to peer further into space and thus farther back in time.
Discovery now slowly backing away from the Hubble Space Telescope. The release coming on time at 12:41 a.m. Central Time.
It's John Holloman at CNN Center, joining us from the middeck crew cabin of Shuttle Discovery, the 4 spacewalkers of the shuttle's mission to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. Telescope is flying free of the shuttle right now. The astronauts winding down after an often tense 6 days of spacewalking and releasing the telescope. Mark Lee, as payload commander, give me your assessment of this mission. How would you grade it and compare it to previous times you've been up on the shuttle?
Well, I'd have to give it an A+. for several reasons. First of all, you get an A when you accomplish everything that you're supposed to do, and the plus gets thrown in for the support we got from the crew and all the contingency things we were able to accomplish. So when you're able to do everything plus take care of all the problems that we're throwing in, and the great part about that is we were ready for most of them. It gives it an A plus in my mind.
Yeah. How did the telescope look to you, and what do you think caused the damage to the side that faces the sun?
Well, I think the telescope looks great. The only part that is a little bit degraded is the side of the telescope that looks at the sun most of the time, and the multi-layer insulation, which isn't that thick anyway, has degraded some. But underneath it, it's only a couple of millimeters thick or mils thick. Underneath it, it's very pristine. So it's a pretty superficial problem, and I think in 3 years they're going to come up and correct most of the insulation problems that we saw on this flight.
Yeah, Steve Smith, I see you have a spacesuit floating there next to you. How did it work? How good was it? And what would you do to improve it for future spacewalkers?
Well, John, the spacesuit actually worked very well. We practiced with very similar suits in the water in Houston and in Huntsville, Alabama at the Marshall Space Flight Center. And the suits that we actually wear in space were acted just like the ones we practice in. They're pressurized to 4.3 pounds per square inch. You are working very hard on them. It's a little bit hard to reach some things because your reach is limited a little bit by the suits. But in general, they worked great. This was the first flight that we wore some new suits that we could actually resize in space very easily. Joe and I shared a spacesuit. That's the first time that's been done. We wore it basically 5 days in a row by just changing out the arms and the legs to fit each of us.
I see Joe with the gloves on there now. The first night of the spacewalk, you and Mark had to go outside and move these refrigerator or telephone booth-sized things. Was it surprising to you, based on your training, when you actually grabbed hold of those things and started to move them?
The answer actually might surprise your viewers, and the answer is no. We have a couple simulators in Houston that help us evaluate what it's like to move 800 or 900 pounds when it's weightless. It's a robotic system, and we had heard from the STS-81 crew that serviced Hubble 3 years ago that we should work on those simulators right before we launched. So all four of us went over to that simulator in Houston the day we left, actually, and practiced moving it. Once we got into space and we pulled those large boxes out, it actually was a little bit easier than the simulators indicate, but it was still a little bit tense for me. I actually felt like that spacewalk held a lot more pressure than the fifth spacewalk to repair the skin.
Yeah, second night of the spacewalk, Greg Harbaugh, Joe Tanner went outside to replace a fine guidance sensor and some other equipment on the telescope. Greg, this is for you. As you assess the difficulty of it and everything you have done over the past 6 days, what's been the hardest part of it for you?
Boy, that's a tough question, John. I think probably the initial part of the first spacewalk, where I was free-floating, was probably the most challenging because it takes a while to sort of adapt yourself to the visual stimulation that you get out there and focus on the job at hand. But in terms of task, I think they all presented different challenges, but, we were up to the challenge in every case. There were some curveballs thrown at us, and we handled each one. There were tight clearances with the fine guidance sensor, and it went great. We had a bent pin in the SATI, and we had a backup cable and swapped it out and handled it just fine. So, my assessment is that there was nothing thrown at us that we couldn't handle between the team on board and the team on the ground.
And question for Joe Tanner. One of my favorite moments was the instant you stuck your spacesuit and your head outside the door into the cargo bay. What was going through your mind as you went outside for the first time?
Well, others that have traveled that same road have told me that I would probably be filled with a mixture of emotions. One of those being awe at the sight. Now, I was maybe fortunate not to get too distracted because when I first stuck my head out, it was at night, and it was just black except for the lights of the payload bay and the lights in my helmet. The other reaction that people frequently have is that they want to grab a hold of the handrail right there with a death grip thinking that if they let go, they might fall all the way to the Earth. And once again, it was at night, so I didn't get to experience that. But it was a moment that I had looked forward to for a long, long time. And when you've anticipated a moment like that for such a long period of time, and it finally happens, it really is a tremendous feeling of satisfaction to finally accomplish that. And that's kind of what was going through my mind.
I wish we had more time. We've got about 3 minutes left. I've got about 20 questions left. Joe, hold the microphone, if you will. I want to get all of you, if you can, in the final few minutes we have, to talk about lessons learned. When you all get down to the ground, you're going to be debriefed extensively for days. You're going to have suggestions for the astronauts who are going to start working on the space station. What sorts of things are you going to tell them that you learned that maybe can be done differently to improve this for the people who are going to have to do, I'm told, 600 hours of spacewalking to build the space station?
That's actually a very good question, and I would say, number one, know the systems that you're working on, know the tasks that you're going to perform, not only the nominal tasks, but what could think about all the possible things that could go wrong in each task that you're going to do, and then come up with a plan for those contingencies before you even get into the situation. And that's where I think we really excelled, is that we had a plan for just about anything that could go wrong, and when we had our little problems in the road, we responded with procedures that we already knew.
Mark, go next, if you will. Same thing. What are you going to tell the space station construction spacewalking astronauts after this mission?
Well, we're going to talk about some of the tools. One of them, is here floating in front of us that we're checking out. It's a space station power tool. We're going to make maybe a few modifications for that. We have some other tools on board that we're going to make small changes to, but basically our suit was fantastic. We can talk a little bit about organization of a 4-person crew and how we divided up duties and responsibilities and things like that. So it's just sort of to run through all the problems we had and all the nominal things that we did, and try to make other crew members understand, why you plan for certain contingencies, how you prepare for others, and, just that organization. Because we have the equipment that's already being built, and we're pretty sure all of it's going to work, and we tested a lot of it here. So it's more of the organization and testing, hands-on hardware type of valves that we need to do in order to prepare for building each individual segment.
Greg Harbaugh, I can ask you that, and let me throw in another question, if I may. Story Musgrave helped CNN during our coverage of your mission, and he said the hardest job he ever had was replacing the solar array drive electronics. It's been improved for you, but based on that experience, tell me what you can about how it's going to be in the future for the space station building astronauts.
Well, I think we've learned an awful lot, thanks in no small part to Story and Jeff and Tom and KT on 61 and what we've done here with 82. There are, I think, some significant lessons learned in the way we went about preparing for this mission that should be applied to station. We spent an awful lot of time in the water going over and over and over the various scenarios and how we were going to do the job. We should not sell short the time required in the water. We should have all the hardware, the mock-ups, and so on for all aspects of the station, and be prepared to go over it. And as Joe said, prepare for all the contingencies. And I think there are some other areas for improvement, but overall the system is robust. We just have to provide enough fallback options so that if something does go wrong, we know how to deal with it.
All right, gentlemen. Steve Smith, I want to hear from you, but we're out of time. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. We'll see you when you get home. Have a safe landing. That concludes CNN's live interview with the 4 spacewalking astronauts from the Shuttle Discovery. As we leave you, we'll tell you that ground-based managers say this mission was more than 100% successful. The telescope was boosted more than anybody's wildest expectation of where it could be. It's a good thing. It's going to make the next mission to serve as Hubble perhaps a little easier, because the telescope is higher in the sky than the astronauts thought they could get it. You can see this picture from 30 or 45 minutes ago after the telescope was released by the space shuttle. And its aperture door, the door that's been closed for the entire repair mission, now open. The Hubble will go through some tests for the next couple of weeks before more pictures come out, and the new instruments that are in there will be used to provide more beautiful pictures for those of us back here on Earth. This is one pretty picture. The Earth spinning beneath the Hubble Space Telescope as it floats free of the space shuttle for the first time in 7 days. The astronauts themselves, as you saw, preparing to come home, and they've learned a lot from this, which they'll be sharing with future astronauts. That concludes our coverage of this interview from space with the astronauts. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
This has been a CNN Live event.
After 5 days of work and 5 walks in space, astronauts aboard the U.S. Space Shuttle Discovery released the new improved Hubble Space Telescope on Wednesday. The telescope will now undergo lengthy tests to see how its upgraded optics, new electronics and repaired insulation will fare in space. But as far as the astronauts are concerned, the mission was a big success.
I have to give it an A+ for several reasons. First of all, you get an A when you accomplish everything that you're supposed to do, and the plus gets thrown in for the support we got from the crew and all the contingency things we were able to accomplish. So when you're able to do everything plus take care of all the problems that we're throwing in, and the great part about that is we were ready for most of them. It gives it an A+ in my mind.
Well, you can learn more about Discovery's mission to upgrade the Hubble telescope by visiting CNN's interactive website. Your ticket to Discovery Hubble Digital Theater is cnn.com.
Am Morgen ließen die Astronauten der amerikanischen Raumfähre Discovery Hubble nach 6 Tagen Reparatur wieder ins All schweben. Unter anderem hatten sie in das 13 Meter lange Teleskop eine neue Infrarotkamera eingebaut und die von der Sonne brüchig gewordenen Stellen in der Außenhaut geflickt. Übermorgen kehren die Astronauten zur Erde zurück.
Der Greifarm der US-Raumfähre Discovery gibt Hubble wieder in seine Umlaufbahn frei. In über 30 Arbeitsstunden wurden insgesamt 10 wichtige Bauteile ersetzt und die brüchig gewordene Außenhaut repariert. Jetzt ist Hubble wieder fit, bis zur nächsten Inspektion in 2 Jahren.
Der Patient kann wieder richtig gucken. Das Teleskop Hubble schwebt nach 6-tägiger Reparatur wieder frei im Weltraum, richtet seinen Blick wieder auf die Sterne. 4 Astronauten der amerikanischen Raumfähre Discovery hatten wichtige Bauteile des Teleskops ersetzt. Außerdem reparierten sie mit Flicken aus Folie Hubbles brüchig gewordene Außenhaut. Die erfolgreiche Discovery-Mannschaft soll am Freitag zur Erde zurückkehren.
Es schwebt seit heute Morgen wieder frei im Weltraum. Die Astronauten der US-Raumfähre Discovery lösten das Teleskop von dem Reparaturdeck des Shuttles, nachdem sie dem Riesenfernrohr bei 5 Weltraumspaziergängen 10 neue Instrumente eingesetzt und die Außenhaut repariert hatten. Die nächste Wartung wird voraussichtlich im Jahr 1999 fällig. Die Discovery kehrt am Freitag zur Erde zurück.
And Discovery is scheduled to make a rare nighttime landing at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And of course, we plan live coverage. And that is now scheduled to happen in about 2 hours. The U.S. Space Shuttle Discovery is homing in on its next rendezvous, planet Earth. But the weather has not been cooperating. NASA has delayed the landing due to a buildup of clouds in Florida. Discovery is scheduled to make a rare nighttime landing at the Kennedy Space Center, and we plan live coverage of the event, now scheduled to happen in less than half an hour.
The following is CNN's coverage of a live event.
Hello, John Holloman at CNN Center. The Space Shuttle Discovery crew less than 2 minutes from touchdown at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We told our viewers around the world what it would look like to watch the shuttle land. Here's some pictures from about 15 minutes ago as the spaceship was in the Earth's atmosphere, streaking over the sky at the Johnson Space Center in or near Houston, Texas. We can take you now to a live picture of the shuttle as it is being picked up on an infrared camera at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the landing strip. You can see the delta outline of the shuttle. Over the past 10 days, the 7 men who've been aboard this space shuttle have traveled around the world 149 times plus. That translates to 4.1 million miles. The astronauts have weighed nothing for the past 10 days, and they've only had the experience of weight for about 30 minutes. Commander Ken Bowersox has a new landing aid at the Kennedy Space Center strip, a series of 50 landing lights, which are in the process of guiding him to touchdown. What we'll do is, as the picture continues to unfold, you'll probably be able to see those landing lights as they illuminate the shuttle as it goes in for its final approach.
Would be about 20 miles from the runway.
This is only the 4th Florida night landing for any shuttle. It's the 9th landing at night in the 82 flight history of the U.S. Space Shuttle program. NASA prefers landing the shuttle in Florida to the alternate at Edwards Air Force Base in California because a Florida landing gets the orbiter back into a processing building about a week sooner than the California landing site. As you look at this picture, I'll just point out to you it is an infrared camera that is designed to look at heat signatures rather than anything else, and it was looking at the heat signature there of several buildings at the Kennedy Space Center, including the large vehicle assembly building. This camera obviously is not heat-seeking, it is light-seeking, and you can see one spotlight at the end of the runway. John Zarella's on the phone with us. John, could you hear the shuttle as it broke the sound barrier moments ago?
We can see the vehicle now just about on the ground, touchdown. You can see the smoke coming. The chute is open, and it is just about to pass directly in front of me. Cameras are clicking as the vehicle comes to a stop after a sensational mission, John.
Completing 150 orbits, traveling 4.1 million miles, ending the second sub-servicing mission to the Hubble Space Telescope.
Beautiful sight, daytime or nighttime. You can see some of the landing lights on the nose of the shuttle as it makes its way down this very long, very large runway. What we'll do is we'll watch as the spaceship glides to a stop, and we'll hear the words from Commander Bowersox that the wheels have stopped turning, meaning Discovery's mission is over.
Copy, will stop Discovery. Welcome back after a successful second Hubble servicing mission. You made those 5 spacewalks look real easy, and we have no post-landing deltas. Pick up on page 5-3.
All right, Kevin, we'll get over to 5-3.
The astronauts have a huge plasticized checklist of things to go through with every switch that they have to
great feedback.
throw. And
Commander Ken Bowersox referencing the new centerline lights on the center of the runway. Crew now stepping into post-landing activities, safing the orbiter. The safing activities for Discovery will take the next 45 minutes or so. During that time, the crew members will also be exiting the vehicle, climbing aboard the crew transport vehicle for routine medical checkups before being transported back to the astronaut crew quarters.
So, shuttle is safely on the ground after a little bit more than 10 days in space. A corrected number of orbits around the Earth, 150. Again, 4.1 million miles. If only they gave frequent flyer miles to astronauts. That concludes our live coverage of the landing of Space Shuttle Discovery. It was a safe landing after a remarkably successful mission working on the Hubble Space Telescope. John Holloman, CNN reporting. We now return you to our regularly scheduled programming.
This has been a CNN Live event.
Less than an hour ago, the U.S. Space Shuttle
Main gear
Discovery touched down at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The 7-member crew left the orbiting Hubble telescope behind with improved computer power, balance, and thermal insulation. And it was an impressive 10-day mission. CNN's John Holloman reviews Discovery's service call to the Hubble.
They did things nobody on the ground expected them to, conducting 5 spacewalks to fix the Hubble Space Telescope. 4 astronauts working in teams of 2 went outside the safety of the crew cabin to replace huge optical instruments inside the telescope. They then replaced computer and navigation equipment, which should allow the telescope to see things it could never see before.
Well, I have to give it an A+ for several reasons. First of all, you get an A when you accomplish everything that you're supposed to do, and the plus gets thrown in for the support we got from the crew and all the contingency things we were able to accomplish. So when you're able to do everything plus take care of all the problems that we're throwing in, and the great part about that is we were ready for most of them. It gives it an A+ in my mind.
The The big surprise for the astronauts came when they started exploring the side of the telescope that usually faces the sun. Insulation panels cracked and peeling, apparently from solar exposure.
There was quite a bit of damage, Mark, and my personal experience was I didn't realize how extensive it was until I got up close and looked at it. My impression and my assessment is that it's fairly superficial. It's the outer layer or two of the multi-layer insulation that's just been cycled so many times in going through the thermal transitions for the millions of miles that this telescope has traveled that it's finally fatigued in some places, and so it cracks. And so you have these spider-type cracks in places and spiderweb-type cracks, and in other places it'd be long, straight cracks and splits, that sort of thing. I think we repaired quite a bit of that. I think we couldn't do everything, but frankly, I'm amazed at how much we were able to repair it.
The crew flew over the Kennedy Space Center the day before landing, and the astronauts reported they could see all the way from the southern tip of Florida to New York City. The next shuttle mission is scheduled to leave on April 3rd for at least 16 days. It's a test of long-duration science in the weightlessness of space. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Die US-Raumfähre Discovery ist am frühen Morgen auf dem Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral gelandet, 1,5 Stunden später als geplant. Wegen Wolken über der Landebahn hatte die NASA die 7 Astronauten noch einmal um die Erde kreisen lassen. Sie hatten 10 Tage im All verbracht und das Teleskop Hubble repariert. Landungen bei Dunkelheit sind für Raumfähren selten vorgesehen. Damit die Discovery sicher aufsetzen konnte, wurde die 4.500 Meter lange Landebahn mit zusätzlichen Halogenscheinwerfern ausgeleuchtet.
Mission with a perfect landing. In an almost full moon and a glowing runway, led the 7-man crew safely to the shuttle's Florida landing area. Low clouds delayed the landing by about an hour and a half. And once the skies had cleared, shuttle commander Ken Barstock said he could see the runway from 7 miles away. The mission to upgrade the Hubble telescope went as planned, but NASA won't finish checking out all the new instruments on board until May.
Mit knapp 2-stündiger Verspätung ist heute früh die Raumfähre Discovery von ihrer erfolgreichen Reise ins All zur Erde zurückgekehrt. Vor 10 Tagen war die 7-köpfige Crew aufgebrochen, um das Weltraumteleskop Hubble auf den neuesten technischen Stand zu bringen.
Mit riesigen Halogenscheinwerfern wurde die 4,5 Kilometer lange Landebahn für eine der seltenen Nachtlandungen ausgeleuchtet. Die Discovery setzte problemlos auf und brachte die Weltraumhandwerker wieder nach Hause. Ich werde der ganzen Mannschaft einen ausgeben, hatte sich Teamchef Mark Lee zuvor auf die Heimkehr gefreut. In 5 Weltraumspaziergängen, die alle zusammen mehr als 33 Stunden dauerten, bauten die Astronauten dem Teleskop Hubble neue Geräte und Elektronik ein. Dabei entdeckten sie große Löcher und Risse in der Außenhaut des Oldtimers, der schon seit 7 Jahren durchs All schwebt. Mit Aluminiumpflastern flickten sie die Löcher, damit die Elektronik des Weltraumteleskops nicht von der Sonnenhitze zerstört wird. Der nächste Weltraum-TÜV für Hubble ist im Jahr 1999 fällig.
The Hubble Space Telescope is floating free again after spending almost a week cradled in the bay of the Space Shuttle Discovery. Discovery arrived back on Earth from its Hubble servicing mission in the wee hours Friday morning. The astronauts took 5 spacewalks to complete the work on Hubble. The work included planned upgrades to its optics and sensors and an unexpected patch-up job on its insulation. It will take 8 to 10 weeks to get the new equipment tested and ready. Scientists hope to see the first images from the refurbished telescope in May. The Hubble has already made enormous contributions to astronomy, including revealing images of a spectacular supernova. A supernova is what happens when a giant star explodes and dies. Scientists around the world have spent the last 10 years watching the fallout from that explosion, and many think the best is still yet to come. Ann Kellen returns with that story.
This is a photo album of a dying star. When this star, many times bigger than our sun, collapsed in on itself. It exploded with the force of billions of atom bombs, scattering debris into space. At that moment, it lost its star status and became a supernova. Canadian astronomer Ian Shelton, stargazing in Chile 10 years ago, was the first to spot the supernova, now named 1987A. 10 years later, he continues to enjoy the show.
Every few years. In the early days, of course, it was evolving from day to day and with very drastic changes. But now it's you know, most people would say it's doing nothing or it's slowed down.
But Shelton and most scientists disagree. They say the show is just beginning. 1987A is the brightest and closest supernova to come our way in 400 years. And thanks to instruments like the Hubble Space Telescope, what once appeared as a blob of light is seen in greater detail. They hope by studying the star's life cycle, it will help them understand how supernovas formed the universe as we know it.
We are stardust. The material that you and I are made of was cooked up in a supernova. If it weren't for supernova, there would be no Earth, there would be no people. There would be nothing but hydrogen and helium in the universe. So one of the reasons that supernovae are important is because the whole universe they played an important role in making the universe as we know it today.
10 years ago, supernova 1987A was a few million degrees Fahrenheit, very hot. Today, it's much cooler, down to several hundred degrees Fahrenheit, and 3 million times dimmer. Even though the supernova has dimmed since the initial explosion, the radiation from the blast still lights up some of the gases and debris around 1987A. Have we ever seen anything like this before?
Never. And no other supernova have we seen anything like this, but it has this triple ring system around it. And we don't know why that's there either. But that ring system was expelled by the star some 10,000 years before it blew up.
Scientists think there are gases they can't see connecting the rings, creating an hourglass shape. And there's debris in the middle of the rings that's hiding whatever is left of the original star. That debris is slowly expanding.
Because it's going to run into this inner ring. When that happens, we get renewed fireworks.
It's not an explosion, but I would say it's a collision.
And the collision will ignite more radiation.
Exactly. It will ignite radiation from the inner ring. Then the ring will be blown away.
The collision between the debris and the inner ring will further light up the area around the supernova, giving scientists a better view.
As soon as the impact occurs, then it'll all light up, and then I think scientists will be able to tell you what's happening to stars before they have this final explosion. As far as we know, it'll stay incredibly bright for at least 30, 40 years, and maybe longer, as the debris of the supernova just smashes into more and more material.
And with the recent mission that put new instruments on board Hubble, scientists hope to track that debris.
HST is free to study the stars.
And see how the death of a giant star gives rise to the birth of others, as the gases from this supernova condense to form new stars. Ann Kellen, CNN, Toronto.
Although my health remains excellent, and my passion to serve and to see that some of these things are corrected and that we're kept on the right path, that burns just as brightly as ever. Another term in the Senate would take me at the end of that term to the age of 83. Now, for that reason and for that reason alone, no other reason, I have decided I will not be a candidate for re-election to the Senate in 1998.
His name is John Glenn.
He was a hero when that meant something. John Glenn was a 40-year-old test pilot when he became the first American to orbit the Earth. He turned 76 in July.
Godspeed, John Glenn. 10, 9, 8, 7.
It seems to me like it was about 30 days ago instead of 35 years. It was that vivid.
2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery.
Now it's so common they call it a space shuttle. Then it was so scary, so unknown.
And it seems almost laughable. Now, but the doctors were concerned about, would my eyeballs change shape? And would my vision become myopic or something, or whatever?
On terra firma, Glenn moved into business and in 1974 won a ticket to Washington. A moderate Democrat seen as an expert on nuclear proliferation, Glenn is also credited with 22 years of yeoman's work in the unsexy territory of improving the inner workings of government. Along the way, Glenn's star lost some shine. One of the Keating Five, suspected of doing favors for a wealthy campaign donor, Glenn was found only to have exercised poor judgment. The truth is, in the political universe, Glenn never soared, never reached the heavens. A 1984 presidential bid was scrubbed. The campaign was chaotic. He was dull on the stump. Still, fans crossing generations and the political spectrum think the totality of John Glenn's work comes back to a single word that used to mean something.
The return of a conquering hero. At each point where there was a new opportunity, I guess I saw it as almost a responsibility.
With the 2 years left in his term, Glenn has a final responsibility which may well color his career. He's the most powerful Democrat on the committee which will investigate political fundraising. Most of the allegations are against Democrats. The question is whether Glenn's apparent decision to leave politics relieves him of any pressure to toe the party line. Candy Crowley, CNN, Capitol Hill.
So, what wiped out the dinosaurs? In recent years, there's been growing evidence the culprit was a huge asteroid. But until now, the evidence was only circumstantial. This week, a team of scientists said they had found the smoking gun that proves the asteroid theory. Ann Kellen has the story.
An international team of scientists working off the coast of Florida has drilled out cores of rock and dirt from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The layers in those cores are giving scientists the strongest evidence yet that an asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula 65 million years ago and destroyed much of the Earth's animal and plant life, including the dinosaurs.
This is an incredible impact. It created a crater about 150 miles in diameter, so you can get some idea of the magnitude of the impact.
Scientists say that asteroids of that size, 6 to 12 miles in diameter, are devastating. The one that hit the Yucatan Peninsula was one of the most massive and destructive. Debris scattered throughout the atmosphere and around the world. The dust was so massive, it blocked the sun, putting the Earth into a deep freeze that killed the dinosaurs, along with 70% of all plant and animal life. The scientists say these core samples tell the history of what happened millions of years ago. A bottom layer contains fossils of animals, including dinosaurs. The layer above it, shattered rock and crater debris from the asteroid hitting Earth 1,000 miles away, followed by a thin reddish-brown layer of dust that scientists say contain remnants of the asteroid itself.
There's a thin layer of the asteroid sitting right on top of the debris, and what makes it clear is it has uranium in it, and that only comes from outer space, and it arrives on our planet aboard meteors and asteroids. And then the fascinating thing is a recovery region where the ocean had gone essentially dead for several thousands of years and then slowly recovered over maybe 3,000 to 5,000 years back to what it was normal. It's like a flight data recorder that laid out the entire history of the event.
According to scientists, this event changed life and the evolutionary history of the planet.
It represents probably the most cataclysmic event that has caused environmental and thus evolutionary change on Earth over the last few hundred million years.
And the scientists say it's amazing it took just 5,000 years after the impact for new species to start appearing. Ann Kellen, CNN reporting.
Science fiction becomes fact as a killer asteroid slams into the Earth. In a first, scientists say they've got the goods on what really wiped out the dinosaurs. According to some researchers, a massive asteroid plunged into the southern Gulf of Mexico about 65 million years ago. However, the evidence was thrown into the Atlantic Ocean across Florida, where an international drilling expedition team says core samples prove that an asteroid killed the dinosaurs. Joining us now to talk about it more on this fascinating first is Dr. Robert Carell. He's of the National Science Foundation, is in Annapolis, Maryland tonight. Sir, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Okay, listen, it is said to be the smoking gun. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think the sediment cores here really provide documentary evidence of the impact and the extinction process and the recovery of life in the ocean and presumably on the planet.
Listen, we have a few things to show to our viewers so they can help understand this a little more. I want to go back to the map. Or actually, okay, this is the, shows us the bottom of the ocean floor in several different sections now. Tell us what's significant about this right here.
the time is going upward. The KT boundary there is where the event occurred. That next section, which is about 17 or centimeters or 10 inches long, is the debris from the impact. Right above that is the remains of the asteroid. And then what's really remarkable is the sediments above, which first show a region in which there's very little life left in the ocean, and then a recovery process over several thousand years. And below the KT boundary, life in the ocean was normal. And so we have this whole event. It's kind of like a flight data recorder that we can then go back to and reconstruct the events on the planet.
It's like splitting open a tree and looking at the different rings.
Yep.
Here's the map that I was talking about prior to this. You see the impact site off the coast, the eastern side of Belize, but the drilling site was several hundred miles to the northeast. Why did you pick this area?
That's about 1,000 miles away, and that impact probably created massive turbulence and uprising in the Caribbean. And the postulate was, let's get on the other side of Florida and the other side of the Bahamas to quieter waters where the sediments would settle down and give us a much more clean and pristine record, and that's exactly what happened.
Doctor, there are those who are skeptical about these findings, and it just happens that on a major television network tonight, in prime time, they aired a program called Asteroid. Some folks say it's PR, others say it's coincidence. Which side do you fall in there?
Well, this expedition was planned about 3 or 4 years ago and had no connection with that event. It's certainly circumstance that occurred on the same night that we here are talking about it. But this scientific program has nothing to do with those TV programs, although they highlight the importance of our understanding of this process that this planet experiences every 100 million years or so.
And if this finding is verified, how will it change our interpretation as we look back on the history of mankind and really the history of the world for that matter?
Well, it'll give us a better starting point for the evolution of life on the planet during the last 65 million years, which is when this event occurred. The extinction of the dinosaurs led to other evolutionary processes that now bring us life as we know it today.
30 seconds to go here, Doctor. How big was this asteroid quickly?
It created a hole something like 250 kilometers or 180 miles in diameter. Its size is of the order of kilometer or so.
It sounds rather substantial. A question here to a lot of our viewers that are sitting out there wondering tonight, can it happen again?
Well, as the other TV shows have said here recently, these events do occur on the planet. There's no evidence that anything of this nature is forthcoming in the near future, but they do occur on the time scale of millions and hundreds of millions of years.
Interesting stuff, certainly. We'll follow it. Dr. Robert Carell, live tonight by telephone from Annapolis, Maryland. Thank you for your time, Doctor.
Dem internationalen Forscherteam ist nach eigener Einschätzung die bedeutendste geowissenschaftliche Entdeckung seit 20 Jahren geglückt. Vor der Küste Floridas fanden sie Beweise für die Theorie, dass die Dinosaurier vor 65 Millionen Jahren durch den Einschlag eines Meteoriten von der Erde verschwunden sind. Michael K. berichtet.
Die Fleischfresser unter ihnen verbreiteten Angst und Schrecken, die Vegetarier wirkten behäbig gutmütig. Sie waren riesig, faszinierend, die Dinosaurier. Lebewesen in einer Zeit, als es noch keine Menschen gab, die zu Schöpferischem ebenso fähig sein würden wie zur Zerstörung. Damals kam die vernichtende Energie aus dem Weltall. Ein gigantischer Meteorit mit einem Durchmesser bis zu 20 Kilometern prallte mit Überschallgeschwindigkeit auf die Erde. Beim Eintreten in die Atmosphäre verwandelte er sich in einen Feuerball, der im heutigen Golf von Mexiko aufschlug. Riesige Staubmassen wurden freigesetzt, so viel, dass für lange Zeit kein Sonnenstrahl zur Erde durchdrang. 70% der Lebewesen starben in der kalten Finsternis ab. Die Forscher bohrten jetzt östlich von Florida im Atlantik, in einer Tiefe von 2600 Metern. Die Bohrrohre drangen 90 Meter in den Meeresboden ein und brachten die Beweise für die Untergangstheorie an die Oberfläche. Die Proben wiesen Spuren eines Meteoriten auf und in der tiefsten Schicht enthielten sie fossile Überreste vieler Tiere. Die Wissenschaftler bohrten ganz bewusst nicht direkt am Einschlagspunkt, weil dort wegen der Heftigkeit der Explosion keine eindeutigen Gesteinsproben zu finden wären. Hätte der Meteorit die Erde verfehlt, wer weiß, vielleicht würden die Saurier unseren Planeten auch heute noch bevölkern. Degeneriert jedenfalls waren sie nicht. So jedoch müssen wir uns mit Animationen und Filmen begnügen. Für Kinder sind Dinos das Größte, auch wenn sie nur aus Stahl und Plastik sind.
We're just hours away from NASA's 82nd Space Shuttle launch and the 22nd flight of the orbiter Discovery with a crew of 7 astronauts. Liftoff is planned at 3:55 a.m. Eastern Time, which is the opening of a 65-minute launch window. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours and holding. We're standing by. We do have live coverage now of the crew getting suited up. We have Commander Ken Bowersox. This is his 4th flight. He has been an astronaut for about 10 years, and Bowersox will have overall responsibility for commanding the flight. He was the pilot for the first Hubble servicing mission back in 1993. And we have pilot Horowitz. As pilot, he will assist Bowersox at the flight controls. This is his 2nd flight. He will assist Bowersox during the rendezvous and retrieval of the Hubble Space Telescope on flight day 3, and also with the reboosting of Hubble if available fuel permits, and of course with the shuttle landing, the night landing that's planned here at KSC. And we have mission specialist Mark Lee taking a brief rest. Mark Lee's making his 4th flight. And we see heart-shaped balloons in the crew quarters, obviously for the upcoming Valentine's Day. Across the room, we've got the rest of the crew. Mission Specialist Joe Tanner. Tanner's making his 2nd flight. This will be his first spacewalk. He'll be teaming up with Greg Harbaugh in replacing one of the 3 fine guidance sensors on Hubble during the 2nd EVA. He will also help replace the optical electronics enhancement kit and a failed engineering and science tape recorder. On flight day 4, the team will replace the solar array drive electronics. And we've got Mission Specialist Steve Hawley. Hawley's making his 4th flight today. He's serving as the flight engineer and will assist the commander and pilot with ascent and re-entry checklists and in monitoring the vehicle systems. Hawley used the robot arm to deploy Hubble on STS-81 back in 1990. And we have the mission specialist Greg Harbaugh. He's making his 4th flight. He will be teamed up with Joe Tanner to perform 2 of the spacewalks. Harbaugh performed a spacewalk on STS-54 and was the backup EVA crew member for the first Hubble servicing mission. And we have Mission Specialist 5, Steve Smith, making his 2nd flight. He'll be a first-time spacewalker on this flight. He'll be teamed up with Mark Lee in replacing the 2 instruments that have a combined weight of about 1,500 pounds. Crew is just riding the elevator down the down 3 flights to ground floor, where they've got a crowd of news media members and also employees who will be wishing them well. We do have some dramatic views of the final inspection team on the very top part of the mobile launcher platform that is known as the 0 level. We can see the aft booster skirt. Also in the foreground here we've got the large tail service mast, and of course some dramatic views of the vapor as it's boiling off through the main engine nozzles.
OVCC, OTC. Go ahead and ask OTC. Go ahead. I'm just going to give you the step to eat ready for crew module and verify ready for hatch closure. CTD and CMCP adjust fuel cell loads to between 250 and 290 amps. CTD copies. CTD copies. Range weather on 212. Launch director, this is range weather. We have no constraints violated at this time. Copy, you go. Is that correct, John? Affirmative. Roger. Mission management team. Jim, the MMT is working, no issues. You're cleared to launch. Copy that. And Discovery, Ken, you and the team have a great mission and do some good Hubble upgrades. We'll see you back here in 10 days. All right, Jim, thanks for the good wishes. We sure appreciate all the hard work that went into getting Discovery and our payload ready for launch. I think with a little luck, in a couple of weeks, the best telescope in the universe will be even better than it is now. And NTD, you're clear to launch. Copy, thank you.
Just a few seconds, the orbiter access arm will be attracted away from the orbiter's crew module, and that event is happening. The arm can be re-extended in just a few seconds if necessary. T-minus 7 minutes and counting. Now pressurizing the external tank for flight.
TLT, OTC, clear caution and warning memory. Verify no unexpected errors. No unexpected errors and clearing.
And the gaseous oxygen vent hood.
Heater reconfiguration complete. Copy that.
The gaseous oxygen vent hood at the top of the tank is being retracted away at this time.
Discovery OTC, close and lock your visors. Initiate O2 flow.
T-minus 35 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds and counting. All systems go. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Discovery now on its way to service NASA's Hubble Space Telescope.
Houston now controlling.
Roll program, Houston. Roger, roll, Discovery.
Roll maneuver is complete aboard Discovery. The vehicle's now in a heads-down position on course for a 28.5-degree, 309 nautical mile orbit.
Three main engines beginning to throttle down now as the orbiter prepares to pass through the area of maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle in the lower atmosphere. The three engines now at 67% of rated thrust. The solid rocket boosters beginning to tail off with their chamber pressure standing by for burnout and separation of the twin solid rocket boosters. SRB separation is confirmed. 2 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Discovery is now downrange from the launch site of 40 miles at an altitude of 35 miles.
Vents open. Copy vents.
T0 SRV ignition.
Liftoff confirmed. Copy liftoff.
Roll program using.
Flight guide, proceed to roll. Copy, good roll. Stand by for pressed ATO. Mark it. Discovery, pressed ATO.
Pressed ATO.
Negative return. Negative return.
Negative return.
Houston Discovery. Go ahead, Discovery.
Roger, Mark. We think we've done the survey as required using the arm. You probably saw some of it, hopefully a lot of it. If there's anything that you'd like to see you didn't see, we can get that for you. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and do RMS power down.
Copy, Dr. Steve. We'll check very quickly with payloads and get back to you.
Okay, no hurry.
Go ahead. Cryo O2, manifold valve tank 2 to open. Talk back open. That's complete. Good morning, Discovery. This is Data. Go grab yourself a telescope. Hey, good morning, Chris. I guess it is about that time. Discovery Houston, we have target PEG 7 targets for the NPC-2 burn on their way up, and we have the maneuver pad numbers for you when you're ready.
Switching views now to the color end effector camera. This looking directly at the bottom of the telescope as it comes into view.
At Houston, we're in free drift, and Dr. Stevie's going to get the telescope. And we see that, Doc. ahead, Discovery.
Yeah, I wish you could see the expression on Dr. Stevie's face. Looks like he just shook hands with an old friend.
And we watched it from down here, Sox. It was certainly an absolute thrill for us to see it on television, and congratulations to all of you for an outstanding rendezvous and a great capture. We're looking forward to getting out there and starting to work on that telescope.
As Discovery and the Hubble Space Telescope move off the east coast of Florida, the spacecraft are now moving into an orbital sunrise. And the Hubble Space Telescope is now firmly in the berthing latches. The sequence will be to close the latches one at a time.
Okay, Houston, Discovery. Go ahead, Discovery. Okay, we've got LATs and MADOPS complete. We're going to ungrapple, and as soon as we do that, we're going to go to attitude. Okay, copy, Mark. We're watching.
Got a good picture.
You guys would probably rather look at HST, though. We'll give you that. Sure is pretty.
Good morning, Discovery. Time for the first two Princess go a little work outside.
All right, we're ready to go fix that thing. Hey, and I got to compliment you on the beautiful flexion we've got music so far.
Discovery. Go ahead. Beautiful picture, by the way. Yeah, I understand we have a go to rotate. Correct. Go for rotate. All right, thank you. Let's see, Steve, you bring it forward another foot, please? Okay, forward a foot. And stop. Stop. Oops, said that park the door open. Huh? The door's just sprung open. Sure did. How about that? Are we in attitude? Yeah, we're close enough. I can go get that door if you want. Just leave it out there. Yeah. How about that? Okay, stop. Stop. Come on, nice and slow. Alright. And, is that alright? You can let go of me. Okay, letting go. Okay, Joe, the tether is retrieving. Houston, Discovery, you have a go for the stiff alignment assist. Officers going in the door. Now? Bottom's going in. They're on the rail? They're on the rail with the V-lat. Now you're on the rail with...
You can see the placement now of Nick Moss and that angle iron, that right angle guide rail at the bottom right. Steve Smith is looking down the upper left-hand corner and aligning that rail.
Go ahead and pitch me 5 more degrees, Greg. Pitching 5 more, that would give you 20. Okay.
Steve Smith now making the final installation of the Nick Moss into the aft shroud of the Hubble Space Telescope with assistance from Mark Lee. Operating the shuttle's robot arm is Greg Harbaugh, who will be one of the spacewalkers on the 2nd and 4th EVAs.
Those look good. Those both look good, but the flip don't look like that one. Okay, Discovery, why don't you try one more time with the nominal setting, and if that doesn't work, then use the manual 38 like you did on the bottom bolt to start it. Okay, that's what we'll do. Get my attitude right.
Discovery Houston, if cameras Alpha and Charlie are not in use at this time, we'd like to take them off and cool them down.
That's complete. You have your hands where you're going to keep them. Yes. And you need to go forward another foot. Forward a foot. Yeah, and we'll tell him that we'll promise to sing to him later. Okay, Dr. Stevie, or Greg, whoever's on the arm, go starboard. Okay, forward.
and we're following you into the external airlock.
Fantastic. Everything I can see here looks okay, Steve.
Discovery Houston for Joe.
Yes, go ahead.
We just got TV back in time to see you come out on the beginning of your very first EVA. Welcome to space, and it was nice seeing a big smile on your face. Have a good one.
They're a little sticky. The slightest yaw yesterday got me too. That's probably what you're saying. That's the AD interface. It's a little sticky. I'm free now though. Well, give that 5 inches to go. Copy, thank you, Mark. Okay, Dr. Stevie, take me in for going in a third jump. That door closes all right, although it does want the spring open just a little bit. All the seals look good on that door, too? Yep, looks good all the way around. 5. That was 7. Sorry, I skipped one there. That's what I released it was 7. Okay, I'm on the bottom one. Okay, it was 7.5. 1. 2. Bring me forward, if you would, Mark, about a foot and a half. Coming forward.
The reflection of Joe Tanner and Greg Harbaugh in the telescope's aft shroud as the Earth clearly in view behind them. The orbiter has reached the midpoint of the 60th orbit of the mission. Halfway through the 60th orbit of the mission, just about to cross the equator, traveling southeasterly across Central Africa.
Mark was just commenting on that. Stop up there for a second while I put it in place.
Discovery Houston for Steve.
Go ahead.
Yeah, some more good news. The OCE aliveness test is successfully completed.
Wow. How about that for real-time feedback?
And
Good news. Okay, that's good, Dr. Stevie. Stop.
a discovery for Steve, when an opportunity presents itself during the solar array slew, we'd appreciate some feedback on the appearance of the MLIs in bays 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Because guys like Oscar and Keith have trained us so well. Go down. Okay. Stop. Stop. Mark, they should come out 7.5 to 9 turns. And of course, watch for the washer. Go to the FRT. Alright. I'm going to pull off and see if that bolt, tell me if that bolt starts to come loose. And move, hand over the MFR. So far. Okay. Roll it a little bit to the left. So left. Roll left. Roll. This side up a little bit. There you go, so I can see it. And now tell me if it comes loose. Mark, do we need to wait till Steve gets there before I bring you down? I have it. Keep coming forward. Okay, forward. Let me just measure it here. You think the left side's okay still? Left side doesn't change. Okay. And it's inside the battery, isn't it? Yeah. Good job on that. How much more? Yeah, that's all it was. Okay. All right. That's good. Let's go out. Go down. Easy.
back up to the bay.
Okay, going back up, Mark. Houston Discovery for EVA.
Go ahead, Joe T.
Okay, do you guys have KU now? And Steve, if you might as well just bring those up to the hatch right now and stow them there, and then we'll get the bi-stim thermal shields and repair kits. Okay. I'm going to stow the PGT in the airlock also. That's affirmative. Yeah, I see the PGC over there. I'll put a motor counterclockwise for you. Okay, and you want the trash bags? Off. I think his assessment is it's pretty stout.
It looks like one of Doc's patented extenders, so we have absolutely no concern.
Yeah, we think we can tow a trailer with it.
We agree.
Greg, since we can't really see the connectors on STS-82, can you come up and pan down? There you go, hold it right there also. Greg, since we can't really see the connectors on STS-82, can you come up and pan down? There you go, hold it right there also. There's that tail they were talking. Valley, in the sun.
Need a little more to your right, Greg?
Yes, a little more to the right. About 6 feet in front of the telescope so you can take me off some also. Greg, while we're getting some pictures, just a reminder, the first thing we're going to do is cut off a curled edge from the torn area, about a 4x4 or bigger, and put it in the trash bag. And your choice where to do that. Get my scissors out. Okay, Dr. Stevie, back me out. Let's take another look. Backing you out.
And Discovery Houston, we've been watching from the ground, and everybody is marveling at Greg's superb skills in putting that blanket. It looks really great. We haven't seen the top one, but that one looks fabulous.
Gives you right there. Oh, okay. One of these close-up shots? Zoom in over there or something? Tell you what, the world will never look the same to me. Either. How's that? We're waving. And you go to egress. Thermal shield. Determined, and we're both still tethered just like we were before. Copy. Okay, is the camera all clear? My feet clear much? Yeah, good. Good. Does it look about the right height? It does. Alright, take me down. Going down. And now you can adjust your tensions. Okay, stop. Stop. I got a better idea. If you want those extenders, I'll wrap one of those extenders around and clip the... Oh, okay, you think the extender will lock tight on that door stop? No, but I can wrap the extender around the door stop and then twist it and hook to that. All right, I like that idea too, Houston. I think Mark's come up with a really good plan here. In Houston Discovery, one reason that particular patch looks a little bit funny and looks like that upper left might be too tight is because there's nothing pulling on the lower left corner.
Discovery Houston with some word on RWA.
Go ahead.
We just completed a test on reaction wheel number 2. It's good. Checks out just fine.
Oh, great. That's good news.
So we're going to go ahead and press with our plan here for reboost to kick off at 1 hour, 33 minutes.
Okay, we'll get set up to kick off reboost at 1:33.
Like I said, there's a stage there, but it's been census minus Z. So the first step's going to be the item 16 and flight controller power, Scotty. That's correct, Zach. That's not from outside. Yeah, it's kind of the only way to get rid of it is shoot straight through the window. And you put the lens against the window, so hopefully it'll come out all right. Is it searching back there, Scotty? What? Is it searching the radar? Good work, guys. It's not over yet, I guess.
Teamwork.
Good job.
Gotta get set too, Dylan.
I'm sure glad to see that first pulse in the right direction.
Right, see? There's the back window. And there's the cargo bay of the space shuttle. And we're just having a sunrise. It's really beautiful up here in space to see sunrise.
How's Hale-Bopp looking for you guys?
Hale-Bopp looks great. And matter of fact, we downlinked some video this morning of it from our perspective. The TV cameras don't really do it justice. In the binoculars that we carry on board, it's very spectacular.
Then you'll know it's good to save. There's two ways. There's two ways to save it. I'll save it.
It's hard to imagine with all this ocean that we could pollute it. Yeah, isn't it? Man, it's so much.
Anything else left on this checklist, I think? Flight control power off. Yep. You did check this one. Pulse. DDUs as required. I guess we could turn it on that. You want to take the DDUs out? Yeah, you can pull the circuit breakers. Save a little trial.
Good job.
Hey, GPS. Okay, 15 seconds coming up. I see the execute. I see 10 seconds. CRT. Execute. 10 seconds. Get ready with the timers. Come on, the 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Well, if they're cleaning off the windows. I think that's okay, of course.
View looking east from the Mission Control Center as Discovery streaks through the atmosphere 10,400 miles per hour. Twin sonic booms announce the arrival of Discovery into the landing area. Time to touchdown, 3 minutes. Main gear touchdown. Nose gear touchdown. Discovery rolling out on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center, completing 150 orbits, traveling 4.1 million miles, ending the second servicing mission to the Hubble Space Telescope.
Will stop, Houston. Copy, will stop. Discovery, welcome back after a successful second Hubble servicing mission. You made those 5 spacewalks look real easy.
And we have no post-landing deltas. Pick up on page 5-3. All right, Kevin, we'll get over to 5-3. Discovery Houston on L2, we'd like nose wheel steering off, please. All right, Kevin, thanks.
Commander Ken Bowersox continuing along with other crew members to press through the post-landing activities, preparing Discovery for the ground operations team. Discovery's 22nd voyage in space is the 6th straight landing at the Kennedy Space Center, the 13th out of the last 14 that have returned to the launch site.